Alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome once again to Legalese, the show that converts legal jargon into legalese. Jummah Mubarak to all those who will be celebrating Jummah tomorrow, and to those who are not, Jazakallah, and thank you so much for joining us. Parental rights in respect of minor children. What's good for the goose is not always good for the gander. What are we talking about? Well, tonight we're talking about something that many hope to avoid in their lifetimes. However, it does affect even more of us sitting at home. What we're dealing with is the primary contact access rights in respect of the minor child, and whether or not both parents share equally in such rights. Do they actually have these rights? Are these rights exercisable? And because, as we always say, that this show is all about you knowing your rights and more importantly, exercising those rights. And if you don't know how to exercise them or don't know what they are, then we look to a legal expert in the field to assist us. Tonight will be no different. We will be looking at someone who's taken a very keen interest in family law, a general practitioner, a very close colleague of mine, someone who is poignantly competent in many aspects of the legal world, Farhana Ismail, an attorney from South Africa with a BA and LLB degree, and as I mentioned, has a passion for family law. So let's turn to Farhana and say Assalamu alaikum and Jazakallah for joining us. Assalamu alaikum, Farhana. Thank you so much for assisting us tonight.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, Nadeem, for having me on the show.
Now, Farhana, it's an absolute pleasure, barakallah. We've dealt with a lot of matters together, you and I, various different matters, some international matters, some human rights issues. So I know that you're competently adequate to assist us. And because we have a skill like yours in the show tonight, we are going to open the phone lines shortly after the introduction, so that those of you sitting at home with those burning questions in respect of things like custody, things like joint rights, things like access to your children if you have children who you cannot see, and something that a lot of us within our communities have to deal with is, what do we do with the grandparents? So these questions and more that you will need to ask, that you would want to ask, and inshallah that Farhana will assist us in answering, you can ask as soon as the phone lines are open, which will be shortly after this introduction. So Farhana, back to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been in practice for 10 years, you've been in your own practice for 3 years, you've taken an interest in family law. How did you get there?
Well, it's been a long road. Over the years, I've done a lot of work, community work with various social welfare organizations, including the Islamic Care Line, Islamic Helpline. And obviously, in everyday practice, you get a lot of clients who has some issue. And due to the increasing amount of social problems that we are experiencing on an everyday basis, which one of it is a very high divorce rate, unfortunately. The issue of the position of the minor child in such a situation has always been a very sad component of the divorce. And that is what caught my attention, is while the parents and the elders are fighting and going through their issues with each other, there's a little child that's involved, or little children that are involved, whose lives are being severely affected. And that is what grew my passion in going into this field and doing the type of work that I do on a daily basis.
Farhana, you know, just to get the ball rolling and to put the right socks in the right drawer, so to speak, let me just understand, and perhaps you can assist us and the viewers as well. Family law, but specifically the rights of contact and the rights of, we call it rights of contact, and guardianship and things like custody. These are things which don't only relate to married couples. It also relates to couples who are not married but have a child together.
Yes, most
and this is different to the element of proprietary interests.
Yes.
Right. So this is important, and why it's important is because, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably have more experience in this regard than I do, is that especially within our communities, within Muslim communities, those people that are married out of the common law principles of the matrimonial property regimes, they feel that these common laws don't affect them. You'll guide us and you'll show us the contrary to that.
Yes. I may just start off by saying that prior to the enactment of the Children's Act of 2005, the position was so that fathers had a limited, if we may call it limited, rights of access and custody to children. After the Constitution, which empowered fathers and gave rights to children to protect their rights to life, dignity, family, environment, welfare, etc., etc., the position is largely changed. And with the old terminology in terms of the old acts was where we use terms such as custody and visitation. And those terms have now been replaced by the Children's Act, where custody has been replaced with the terminology care and contact, okay? And then we have another term that we use being primary residence, and then obviously guardianship.
Okay, so this, sorry to cut you, so this extends, as I asked you previously, just for definition purposes, it extends to those couples who are unmarried, as well as to those couples, obviously, who are married.
Yes.
Right. And of course, if they are married, and this only then becomes a problem when they get divorced, essentially.
Yes.
Because at the time of marriage, well, then they're obviously living together, and there's no issue in that regard.
Yes, most definitely.
So let's get into it. The phone lines are going to be open. The number to dial will appear on your screen, as you know and as you always see. So start dialing. I know there are a lot of questions that you would like to ask. Inshallah, Farhana will be able to assist you. But in the interim, Farhana has prepared for us a diagram which we're going to pull up onto the screen right just now, and we'll be talking surrounding this diagram, the points that are relevant to this aspect of family law. And Farhana will guide us through this maze, which is family law, and assist us, inshallah, on what it is we need to know, what our rights are, how to exercise them. So let's look at this diagram, and whilst the diagram is up and we're taking a look at that, the number will be flashing on your screen, and that is a number that you can dial in order to call us in and ask questions. So the diagram comes up on our screen. Farhana, it's all yours.
Okay. Prior to the enactment of the Children's Act, it was assumed that the mother was the sole custodian of the minor child. And the courts relied, and there was a concept that the mother was a better caregiver of the child. And the maternal preference rule was largely relied on, that the mother was in a more better position than the father to nurture a child. Subsequent to the enactment of the Children's Act, the position has largely changed, whereby the Act now confers parental rights and responsibilities, as you will see on the screen, to both parents. So what it essentially means is that both parents are the co-holders or joint holders of parental rights and responsibilities of the minor child.
That's automatic. That's in accordance with the Act. It's granted to you regardless.
Yes, it's automatic. Right. So what I've done is I've on the diagram is, in terms of the Act, I have separated the various components of what parental rights and responsibilities entail.
Okay.
So if you move to the left-hand corner of the screen, the first component that we look at is guardianship.
Okay.
Now, for purposes of tonight, we're going to focus mainly on the last two concepts on the right-hand side, which is primary residence and contact. But I'll just give you a brief background on guardianship, care, and maintenance, because it's all interrelated,
right, of course.
So to speak.
Okay.
So
let's look at that. Let's discuss that then.
Okay. So both parents are guardians of the minor child or children. Okay. You must bear in mind that being a guardian, you may act independently of each other. So as a guardian, you don't need both the consent of the parents to carry out a particular act. Okay. So what does guardianship entail? Guardianship entails factors such as the adoption of a child, where both parents need to consent. If a parent wants to remove the child from the Republic or beyond the borders of the Republic of South Africa, then the consent of both the parents will be needed. If the child is below the age of 18 years and wants to get married, then both the consent of both the guardians will be required as well.
If I can just stop you very quickly, and I won't interject too much, but on that issue of taking the child outside of the borders of the Republic,
yes.
Talk to me very quickly, if possible, on the international law of the return of the child. What does it say in respect of that? I know that there is well, just explain to me, give us some guidance in that regard.
Okay, I think let's
just briefly, I know it's a very...
let's take it, it's an extensive field, yes, but let's take it a step back. In terms of our new immigration law that's come into place about removing children out of the country, the position is changed whereby if one parent wants to remove the child from the country, an affidavit is needed and the consent of the other parent is needed to remove the child from the country. If that is not obtained, then the child cannot get a visa and travel to another country. Okay, that's the new law, that the immigration law. And if a parent illegally removes the child, then they face a penalty.
So that lends a hand then to
child trafficking.
And of course, the Children's Act in respect of a mother and father or couple married, or unmarried rather.
Yes.
Okay.
If a child has been removed from the Republic and has been abducted, then, and this is a topic that we can discuss on its own, okay? But just briefly is that we then have to approach the chief family advocate, and they will then make the necessary investigations in the country within which we suspect that the child has been removed to. It's a very tedious process.
Yes.
And obviously...
and the evidentiary material that you required in that regard is equally laborious to obtain. I mean, you need to have specifics in respect of, you know, did we send an email? Did we get an email back saying this child is not going to be returned? Did you know, that type of concrete proof? Is that how you understand it?
Yes, that's how I understand it. But also more importantly so is that if the child consents to having gone with the other parent, then that also plays a large factor in determining whether the child should be returned and brought back home.
But we're talking about minor children. So does the consent of a minor still carry weight in an instance?
It does. It depends on the age of the child, the maturity of the child. And the Act does make provision where the child's voice has to be heard. You'll see as we carry on into the program and we discuss other issues relating to parental rights and responsibilities, the voice of the child is a very important avenue that needs to be explored.
All right, good.
Okay.
Let's jump to that because it's a very interesting thing, and it's something that I think a lot of people need to understand.
Yes.
You know, when dealing with this. So let's jump to that. In the meantime, just remind you that the phone lines are open now. The number to dial appears at the bottom of your screen. So get dialing when you see the number and ask the questions you want to ask. So let's get to that, Farhana. Let's look at the diagram again very quickly. Okay. As soon as the number comes off the screen, we'll look at the diagram again, and you can take us through the next element of the diagram.
Just the last two concepts of guardianship would be if the child wants to enter into a conflict, then the consent of a guardian is required.
Of course. So
if the child says that, you know, he wants a simple thing like a cell phone contract, a guardian needs to sign. And when you're applying for the passport of a child, then you also need the consent of both the guardians. So that's what guardianship entails. So moving on to the next element of parental rights and responsibilities, you look at the care of the child. So the care would involve the day-to-day care of the child. So the elements would be the education of the child, the religious upbringing of the child, and that the religious upbringing is another whole topic.
But it's very important.
It's very important.
Especially for members of our community. And I say this because there is a possibility where you have a situation where a Muslim man marries a non-Muslim woman or vice versa. And that becomes a crucial element. Crucial,
and those are the elements that lead to very acrimonious divorces. And we would need another show to discuss that.
I know that. But
aspect.
Touch briefly on that, Farhana, if you can.
Well, there again, it depends with whom the minor child is primarily resident with. So obviously, who the minor child is primarily resident with would largely depend on which religion the child follows. And we must also take into account that we don't want the child to become imbalanced,
right,
and confused as to what religion the child needs to follow.
Right.
So very often the approach that's taken is that when the child is in the care of the mother, the child will follow at that particular time the religion of the mother, and vice versa with the father.
right.
And also, for example, the child will then celebrate Christmas and Eid in the same year,
Yeah.
or Diwali and Eid in the
Yes,
same year.
yes. You see, now there is an authority on this
Yes.
case law, and it's a Cape Town High Court matter. And in that matter, I came across someone dealing with a very similar, or exactly these facts. Essentially, a Hindu and a Muslim got married, and essentially the children had to be brought up in either one or none,
yes.
essentially, of those religions. And the authority on the matter said essentially that, the judge said essentially that when the child grows up, the child will be free to choose whatever religion he wishes.
Yes.
The child will choose.
Yeah.
So it is not incumbent on the court, as the upper guardian of all children, which is a fundamental principle of our Children's Act, is that right?
Yes.
It's not incumbent on the court to decide now whether or not that child must be brought up in either religion.
No.
So he cannot say to that child, when you are with your mom, practice X religion, and when you're with your dad, practice Y religion. So how does, and I know it's a complicated thing, but how would you navigate around something like that? Or rather, let's ask this more easier question. What would you advise people of mixed religion marriages or relationships with their children involved?
That's a difficult one.
It is.
Yes,
I apologize. And I know that you're adequately capable to
Yes,
answer it, so go for it.
Look, the courts follow the middle approach, where they would suggest that the child be exposed to both religions, okay? And then when the child reaches the age of majority, or when the child reaches the age where he can or she can voice her opinion, the child obviously has a right to choose. I have a very personal opinion on this, and I'm not sure if I can share it.
Well, share it.
But
it's your personal opinion.
as far as religion is concerned, I think that whoever the child is resident with will be the dominant factor.
Right.
And obviously my religious convictions come into play because there's a lot of issues relating to this, insofar as if the child the eating habit, for example.
Absolutely.
Eating certain rituals that the child has to
and
undertake.
What to eat.
And what to eat. Which you cannot enforce on the other parent to exercise while the child is in that person's care.
Certainly not.
So, we have to tread very carefully around this issue. It's a very, very difficult issue.
Whilst you at home are thinking about that and lulling over what Farhana has just said, we're going to take a very quick commercial break. In the meantime, please remember that the phone lines are going to be open when we come back. So please dial and ask the questions that you would like to ask. Until then, Jazakallah for staying with us. Assalamu alaikum. We'll be back shortly. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Legal Ease, the show that converts legal jargon into legal ease. Whilst you were away and whilst we were off air, we were having a very interesting discussion regarding this topic and specifically that issue regarding religion. It is certainly a show for another night. It's very intricate. But let's move very quickly on to the next elements of that act, Farhana. And whilst we're doing that, inshallah, we'll be waiting for the call. So let's deal with the issue of care. Let's finalize that very quickly, and we can deal with the two issues, primary residence and contact.
Okay, so just to conclude with the issue of care, then you have the other factors such as the upbringing of the child on a day-to-day basis, the moral fiber of the child, and then obviously the mental and dental, medical and dental aspects of the child, in terms of the child's health.
Right.
So that would be the daily care that the child needs to receive, and of which is a right of a child, which right is protected by our Constitution and by our Bill of Rights. And any parent who does not provide those basic rights, the law requires that such child be removed and put into a place of safety.
Take me through the practical process in respect of this. So now a couple gets divorced, or a couple are unmarried and are now essentially separate from each other. They now put into place a settlement agreement regulating the aspect of how they are going to interact with this minor child or minor children. So an agreement, they go to Farhana Ismail attorneys, an agreement is essentially drafted, and the agreement now must be made an order of court.
Yeah.
What happens from here? Who decides whether or not this agreement is a reasonable agreement or not?
Well, the attorneys obviously would sit around the table and, with both the clients and draft out the agreement as to, who has the primary residence of the child, meaning with whom the child would live with, and who has the contact rights, in respect of the rest of the time. So once the agreement is signed between the parties, the agreement is then sent to the family advocate, the office of the family advocate, which is a division of the High Court.
Of course. May I ask you to hold that thought? I'll tell you why. There is a call on the line. It might add to this question, and if it does, we'll deal with it in the same answer. If not, then we'll just shove it for when you finish. If you don't mind, let's just quickly take this call. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, caller. You can go ahead.
I'm in a call. Hello?
Assalamu alaikum.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Hello? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Can you hear me?
Assalamu alaikum. My parents are divorced, and I would like to know, for 11-year-old boy, where must he stay Islamically?
Where must he stay what? Sorry, can you hear me?
Islamically, where should I stay? With my mother or father?
Oh, so where must the child stay? During the divorce, or once the divorce is finalized?
Yes, I can hear you, G.
Okay, can I ask you a favor? If your TV is on, would you just turn it off or turn it silent? Because
Once the divorce is final.
Okay, Farhana, let's quickly deal with it. It's something similar to what we're talking about, fortunately. Yeah. The 11-year-old boy, the parents are getting divorced. She's asking, where must this boy live? And I think you were covering it already in your introduction to that thing, sir.
Well, the premise upon which the Children's Act is based is always what is within the best interest of the child. Right. So, if there's a dispute as to what is within the best interest of the child, and the question arises as to whom the child has to live with, and the parents cannot reach agreement, then the matter has to be investigated. So, if one of the ways within which the matter is referred to investigation is that if the couple is married in court, not only a religious marriage, the matter will be referred through the divorce process to the office of the family advocate. Right, as you're saying. Yes, we'll then conduct the investigation, and what the investigation entails is visits to the homes of both the parents by a social worker, who will look at the environment, the surroundings within which the child is living, whether it's safe, it's secure, and what is the circumstances.
And a social worker obviously gets involved.
Yes, a social worker, in respect of the physical surrounding of the child. Right. Insofar as the emotional stability of the child is concerned, the family advocate would then get a psychologist that would evaluate the child and to see, as to what is the exact emotional state of the child, what is the preference of the child. Yes. Obviously, if the child is much younger, they employ other means to get an indication. So usually if the child is 4 years or younger, right. They would do play therapy with the child. So to just say that who the child must be who the child must live with is very general, because it's very difficult to answer, because there's a whole process that we need to go through, and at the end of the process, the family advocate would make a recommendation, which 99% of the time the court would follow.
And in a situation like, sorry to cut you, but in a situation like an unfit mother or an unfit father, where you now want to limit the contact, all right, and we're going into that element now which you wanted to touch on already, but when you want to limit now this contact, because either the father is an alcoholic or a drug addict or a recovering alcoholic or a recovering drug addict, alternatively the mother is an alcoholic or drug addict, or perhaps maybe she has a nighttime job and she can't actually care for this child, does that completely exclude her from having rights of contact, and so does it exclude the father if it was a situation like that?
Most definitely not. If you look at the element of contact, we've got two components under contact, and that would involve supervised contact and unsupervised contact. Now, touching on what you've said, if for some reason or the other, one of the parents is unable or incapacitated due to the fact that the parent is abusing drugs, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, or the parent abuses the child, the court would then recommend order that the parent be allowed supervised contact.
Right.
So more often than not, the supervision takes place with a social worker. Or a family member or a neutral person known to both parties that can supervise the access. The parent would then have to prove after a period of time that he will be able or she will be able to exercise unsupervised contact, depending on how, where they at that point in time.
And then those rights essentially could change.
Those rights could change. And you've mentioned that, the person may be on drugs. So there's a huge fear, and I get a lot of cases where either spouse, and it's not limited to males, are abusing, are substance abusers. And what happens there is that they start off with supervised access. Right. And the social worker would go through and watch the interaction between the parent and child. Yes. But in this process, the parent himself has to go through has to go through a rehabilitation process.
Brilliant. Right.
Okay? But in most cases, there's still a fear by the other parent that, the spouse or the ex-spouse may relapse. And in that case, what happens is that we can order that the spouse undergoes random alcohol or drug testing, so to move away from supervised to unsupervised contact.
Brilliant. Okay, I like that, and there's a question I'm going to ask you on that just now. But let's take this caller, Farhana. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, caller. If you can hear us, you can go ahead. Caller, can you hear us? Seem to be having some technical difficulties. I can't hear them trying to talk, but... Assalamu alaikum, caller, can you hear us?
Yes, I can't hear you. Assalamu alaikum. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. I can hear you very faintly. Let's just let the technical guys sort this problem out very quickly. In the meantime, we're just going to put you on hold and let's sort that out. In the meantime, Farhana, let me just ask you the question I was going to ask you. So you're talking about limited rights of contact, supervised and unsupervised. What about a situation where one of the parents are imprisoned?
One of the parents are imprisoned,
yes. and so now the parent wants to have access or wants to have contact with this child. Give me a practical scenario. How would it work?
I think it would depend on the attitude of the other parent. So if the other parent is comfortable in exposing the child to the parent that's been incarcerated and going and supervising the visit, we wouldn't have a problem. But I think if the parent is not comfortable in that, it would raise questions by the child, you know, as to, you know, why my dad or my mom is behind bars, then, you know, maybe a professional would need to accompany the child, you know, to be in a better position to cope with the child's emotional reaction.
Interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
Let's try this caller again. Caller, if you're still there, Assalamu alaikum, you can carry on.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. You can go ahead.
Okay. I see they're still busy talking, so I'm not sure if I can go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. I apologize. You can go ahead.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Farhana Ismail.
Ji.
My name is Farhana Ismail.
Ji, you can carry on. We can hear you. Fahima, if you can just...
I've actually been divorced for a year.
Right.
And I actually haven't claimed any maintenance or anything for my daughter. Islamically, will that be possible for me to go to the law, or do I just wait for my...
Okay, Fahima, we'll answer your question off air. Jazakallah very much for the question. Just listen to the answer off air. Farhana, we were going to say when the show started that maintenance is a very crucial element, very, very crucial, and something that hopefully we'll have you on again to discuss in depth. But in the interim, because it's part of the elements of parental rights and responsibilities, her question is as follows. She says she's been divorced for a period of time. She hasn't claimed maintenance at all. Islamically, is she allowed to? I'm not too sure that we need to discuss whether or not Islamically she's allowed to, because if she's divorced, she has a common law right in this regard. Help her out on that very briefly if you can.
What would you like to know the procedure?
Well, first of all, is she entitled to maintenance? Can she claim maintenance from her husband?
Yes, most definitely. Yes. The issue of maintenance, as Nadeem pointed out, is quite a complex issue. The general law is that parents are liable for maintenance pro rata. So depending on your respective means and earning capacity, a parent would then, the duty of support lies on both parents towards the child. So if, for instance, one of the parents is not working or wasn't, there was no need for that parent to work, and all of a sudden, you know, the divorce happens and they're put into a corner where overnight they need to fend for themselves, then whilst this parent is not working, the duty of support solely rests on that parent who has the financial means.
Okay.
But as soon as both parents start working, it would be a pro rata obligation on both.
All right. So what would she do very quickly in this regard? Should she contact the maintenance court?
Yes, you should approach the maintenance court. Lots of clients prefer using legal representation, obviously.
Right, of course.
Because, you know, more often than not, you get the spouse from whom maintenance is being claimed, showing a lower salary or claiming that he's unemployed or trying to evade the maintenance obligation.
And that's where we look at financial inspections, investigations.
Yes, and that's why I think legal representation is very important.
Yeah. Well, we always advocate on the show, Farhana, and it's a good point that you've raised again, because it's the ethos of the show is that, you know your rights, know the law, and if you don't, then make sure that you have someone who does. And in this instance, the person who is in the know is Farhana Ismail. So while we lull over that, we take another call on the line. Farhana, let's take this call. Inshallah, we can assist this person. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Can you hear us?
Yes, loud and clear. Okay, we're new Muslims, and my wife would like to ask you a question. I just hope it's suitable for this program. Can you hear me?
Sorry, just repeat that again one more time.
Excuse me? Ask the question.
Hello?
Ask the question.
Just carry on speaking, brother. I can hear you faintly. Sorry, it's you say again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I can hear you perfectly. Say that again. You can go. You can continue now.
Thank you. I have a question with regards to property law. We moved into a new property a week ago. Unfortunately, when we signed the offer to purchase, we listed a few conditions that were visible at that time. However, when we moved in a week ago, which was on the 31st, we noticed a lot of other defects on the property. So we've spoken to the agents and spoken to the lawyers and stuff.
Sister,
and
if I can stop you, I apologize profusely for this. I was hoping that your question would morph into something that was relevant for tonight's show. The expert that we have on the show for tonight deals specifically with family law. She could probably answer your question on property law, but if I could ask you to potentially maybe email her, the email address will be up on the screen later on. Email her in respect of property law and she can deal with that via email. The show for tonight is really focusing on family law. I apologize for that, but if you don't mind, just deal with that directly with her and she'll assist you.
No, that's fine. We'll
Jazakallah
definitely
khairan. Assalamu
email
alaikum.
her.
All right. Okay. Whilst I can hear there's another call on the line. We're going to answer that call and put you on hold. In the interim, let's just quickly take another ad break, Farhana. We just and then come back to that call. Assalamu alaikum. Stay with us, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Legal Ease and Jazakallah for staying with us. Excuse me, very interesting show that we have tonight, as you can hear. We've already got a call on the line, and we're going to take that call and then start again with what we're talking about. We left off talking about contact, supervised and unsupervised. Very, very crucial topic for us sitting at home, and I'm certain that all of the people that are calling are either calling in respect of a personal matter or alternatively in respect of someone that's very close to them or someone that they know. So listen to the questions and answers. Inshallah, we'll guide you through this very difficult aspect of our law. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, caller. If you're on the line, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
I don't know. I just walked in from hospital now, so I see this is about family law.
It's family law, yes.
So I've got a problem, and I don't think it's off the topic, but it's about my husband. He was working, but the things, problems at work was very bad, and the more I told him, that he needs to take it up with the manager and whatever. He told me he almost got a stroke on the warehouse floor. And then I said, he mustn't upset himself so, and he needs to speak to one of the people that's in the hierarchy. And he just said, no, they're never available, and the manager doesn't listen to him, and it was just getting worse. A few days later, he has the stroke, a severe stroke. He's lame from the right side down. He's been in hospital for 4 months. He's been to a rehab. He is blind on the right side. He's deaf in his right ear. He cannot walk. Mentally, he was a trainer, which means he was a very important person at work. But the work now gives me nothing, in a sense where the support, it's driving me up the wall, because now this strong man that used to train everybody, he upgraded himself. Now I went to the Labour Department and I told him, he said, nothing that we can do. They said, no, the lawyers can't help him, legal, I can't help him, because they say he has to come personally. And he never made a complaint to the Labour Department or the CCMA to say that they're treating him unfairly, because just before he had the stroke, his manager there sent in a report saying that he's underutilized. And this is a man that would never even take lunch. He would, and everybody knows it, and everybody was upset with him.
To stop you there, I
take
apologize.
it forward. I don't know what to do now.
Okay.
Because
I apologize. Yes,
they don't deal with third parties.
It is family law related. I apologize. I hear that your question is sort of bordering within the realm of medical and labor. So it'll be difficult for our guests to answer that question. But please email me after the show and we'll deal with it. And inshallah, if she can help you, then we'll send that question through to her via email, and then inshallah she'll be able to assist you. But if it's not directly related to family law for tonight's show, it'll be difficult to answer.
Shukran, I appreciate it. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah. Farhana, let's carry on then in that regard. We're talking about contact supervised and unsupervised. Okay, so we dealt with the issue of an imprisoned person, that's fine. But ultimately the ethos is that whatever's in the best interest of the minor child and what's good for the minor child. Yeah. Let's go to the issue of primary residence. Yeah. It's a very important thing. You started talking about it. You said that initially the courts were looking at a principle of maternal what is the word?
Maternal preference rule.
Maternal preference rule, but they've drifted from that.
Yes.
And you've had a lot of experience in this regard. What is the court's mindset now with regards to equal rights in respect of primary residence of minor children for fathers and mothers, or husbands and wives, or men and women?
Okay, that's also a very broad topic to cover. Primary residence would be vested with the parent whom the court considers to be the primary caregiver of the child. What does primary caregiver entail? That would be the person with whom sees to the day-to-day needs of the child on every level. Social, psychological, emotional, mental health, food, the day-to-day needs. So when a parent is trying to obtain primary residence, one of the factors that the court will look at is how closely bonded that parent is with the minor child. Also, we have a concept flowing from that that could also be another option, which would be shared primary residence. So one of the requirements for shared primary residence obviously is that the parents live within close proximity of each other. But the main point of primary residence is whoever the child is primarily resident with shares the greater part of the of time with the child.
Right.
So the non-resident parent then has access rights or visitation rights. So what the norm that the courts usually follow, okay, bearing in mind that in as much as a parents want access to their child, a child also doesn't want to be disturbed.
Right.
So the courts don't want a situation where the child is picking up for 2 days and living with mommy, and then 2 days and living with daddy, and
so
the child is confused.
Right.
Okay. So what the courts rely on on the norm of where the child would spend every alternate weekend, sometimes from a Friday to a Sunday, or a Saturday and a Sunday, depending on the age of the child and the work routine of the non-resident parent. So that parent would be entitled to every alternate weekend with their child. Basic rights where that parent would be given the circumstances and optional 1 day or 2 days midweek access to their child, reasonable telephonic contact, and then obviously you get your holidays and religious holidays and school holidays where the courts would then give a guideline as to how the parents should, by mutual agreement, share those holidays.
I have a question regarding telephone contact. Before we get to that issue of long and short, the long and short holiday story. But before we get to that question, if there is a caller, I think on the line, inshallah, we can hear this caller as well. Let's just take this call and we'll come back to back to the discussion. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, caller.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam. I can hear you. I'm not sure if the guests can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. I can hear you. You can go ahead.
Okay, what I'd like to know, regarding consent from both parties. Now, I'm referring to where a child is living with one of the parents, and it hasn't. It's already been under the traditional marriage and not under court of law. You understand? And the father hasn't been working. Has actually has got some debilitating mental illness. And regarding crossing of borders, what is the extent of permission granted from one of the parties that in that situation whereby they are not contributing to a child's upbringing in any sense, whether it's whether it's well-being, whether it's financial or otherwise?
I'm so sorry. I can hear you. I can hear you. I just can't hear you very clearly. I'm not going to be able to answer.
Okay. What I want to know is, when crossing borders, what is the extent whereby the permission of both parents is compulsory? Regarding when a father is not working,
Right.
has got medical illness, hasn't been really supportive, playing a supportive role emotionally or financially.
Okay, so I think I get the question. Farhana, let me thank you, Kola. I'll narrate your question for purposes of the viewers who couldn't hear it and for my guest. So Farhana, basically we're dealing with a situation with where the caller is saying that one of the spouses, or in this instance the father, hasn't contributed, isn't working, is not providing any support to the minor child, and I think it extends to contact in that regard. Does the absence of financial support essentially exonerate or take away the right of contact of a parent?
Absolutely not. We must be very clear.
And this is a common misconception.
Yes, and I'm very glad that the caller has brought this up. We must be very clear that the non-support of a child by a parent does not cannot be set off against his access rights. And very often spouses rely on this, and it is a very big misconception that because the one parent is not supporting the child, that parent does not have a right of access to that child. We must be, and the courts are very strict when it comes to this. Right. There's a very clear distinction between maintenance and between access. It's two very separate rights, right, in respect of the parent and the child. And again, you know, as we said earlier, the issue of maintenance, in as much as it affects the minor child, is largely an issue between the parents. And that issue should not flow onto the or affect the relationship with the child, with the parent, by denying the parent that right.
If though, and maybe you can share with us the court's mentality or the mindset of the upper guardian, who is the court, where a scenario occurs where the father or the mother, let's in this instance look at the father, where the father has money, but just completely disregards his duty or his obligation in respect of financial support. Does that not paint him in a very poor picture when time comes for primary residence, custody, rights of contact, things of that nature? Or do the courts completely ignore his attitude or the attitude of a spouse in that regard? Or
they don't ignore it. And again, the focus would then be, when you say the attitude, would it be the attitude towards the ex-spouse or the other parent of the child, or would it be the attitude towards the child?
Yes.
Because I mean, obviously, you know, if he's negligent on his duty of support towards a child, but he has a terrific bond with the child on the other hand, you cannot deprive him of that right.
Okay. Okay, I hear the answer, and I think that we're going to have Farhana back for another show, because we haven't even covered a third of what we wanted to cover. But I think that's a good place to end, yes. Farhana. It's something for people to think about. I think we've given them a lot of very valuable advice. I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed giving you the show. I apologize profusely for the poor sound quality on the calls. Inshallah, we'll get that right at the next show. But we have got some very good questions in. I can hear the calls still going off the rock, off the handle, but inshallah we won't be able to get to them. Please contact ourselves or Ms. Ismail. Farhana, just your email address, if you can give that out onto the screen if you don't mind.
Okay, it's Farhana, Farhana, at Ismail, ISMAIL, ATT.co.za.
Okay, so it's Farhana, her first name, Farhana, .Ismail, ISMAIL, ATT, short for attorneys.co.za.
Yeah. And if I may just conclude with a concluding remark. To all parents out there, to all spouses and ex-spouses, it's not about your right to your child. And it's not about the animosity between the two of you. It's about the child's right to having both parents in their child's life, to ensure that their child grows up with a stable, mind into adulthood to be beneficial to a quality life.
I don't think there's anything else left to say. There was brilliant closing remark and very valuable advice from our expert for tonight's show. This has been another broadcasting of Legalese. Jazakallah for staying with us. Join us again next week. Same time, same place. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.